I don't like that feeling.
Do you like this?
Yeah. Oh, you're so cold.
Well, I get no circulation in my hands.
Fun fact, Bloberta is voiced by Britta Phillips, who was also the singing VA for Jem from Jem and the Holograms, which outside of that terrible 2015 movie, I think is actually a pretty good franchise that deserves more love. Just saying, yes, this will be important. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about, still can't say the show name, or more specifically, Bloberta Puppington, the resident housewife of the show. Now, with my reviews for this show, still not 30 seconds, there have been two constant themes. One, that the show satirizes Christian fundamentalism by showing the idea of gender roles and how trapped women can be by them. Second, that Bloberta and Clay in, okay, it's been about 30 seconds, Moral Orel are a more realistic version of Steve and Chris and Linda Stotch from South Park. However, I will say that in defense of Steve and Chris and Linda, and what little defense you can give them, they both love each other. I can tell they do. Even if they're horrible parents, I've never sensed any animosity towards the other outside of Butters' very own episode. And even then, they still made up in the end. It's probably their only redeeming quality. But anyways, yes, Bloberta and Clay are how I believe Steve, Chris, and Linda would be from a realistic perspective, where the pair seem happy, seem being the key word here, but in truth, the pair stopped being married a long time ago, and now they only really have a paper marriage. But the only reason they stay together is because they're concerned about appearances and what people will say about them. They've both tried to find love elsewhere to varying levels of success, and they take their toxicity as a couple out on each other and on their sons. And why are they married in the first place?
Oh, well. Why not?
Bloberta, I'm getting to that, so let's discuss. Yes, like I said above, Bloberta is Clay's wife and Orel's mother. Like Clay, she's a God-fearing woman and a devoted housewife who has an obsession with cleaning and keeping things tidy, with the exception of Shapey's room. Like to the point where, in Turn the Other Cheek, she was only concerned that Orel was getting his ass kicked since it meant his clothes kept getting soiled with his blood and dirt and whatnot, and it meant she kept running out of cleaner. Before that, she was all smiles and charm and even sang along to Orel's record. Again, we'll get to her singing voice later on. Actually, the housewife thing is another thing we should discuss since it's a big part of her character, and I think it's a really good deconstruction, I guess you could say. You might think that Bloberta being a housewife means that by the rules of sitcoms, she needs to be neurotic and insane, since generally, in most sitcoms, although certain shows are trying to subvert this nowadays, it goes that there's a husband who is stupid and or crazy, and a wife who either spends all her time parenting her husband, or is just neurotic and crazy in general. Like, give me at least 5 nuclear sitcoms where that isn't the case. And at first, Bloberta is like this because, hey, nuclear family sitcom, but I think there's actually good reason for it, writing-wise. She's just plain unhappy. See, as a housewife, Bloberta has to spend all of her time at home and can only leave for inconsequential stuff like groceries or church. And as a housewife, she isn't expected to work, meaning she doesn't have her own income. She's practically bound to Clay. She has nothing to do to occupy her time. Therefore, Bloberta is actually a very lonely woman who has 0 friends or forms of companionship. She's emotionally numb and depressed. She can't get any love from her husband. They hate each other so much they sleep in separate beds with a lust card, and claim likely to the townsfolk and to Orel that it's for religious purposes, as religiously you're only really supposed to lay with each other to make babies, even if lust isn't a sin between a husband and wife, but you get my point. Meaning her only stock is being a housewife and hyperfixating on rudimentary tasks like cleaning. Kinda like she doesn't get control in her own life, but she can control something small like a stain or a dirty dish. Sorry, it sounds weird how I'm saying it, but compare her to Clay. Clay is the mayor. What control he can't exert at home, he can exert on a whole town. Bloberta's reach is a lot more finite. When you clean, you fix things. You make it all better. You help. And you can solve it, or you have to solve it because it distracts you from thinking about how bad your life is. I don't know. I know a few people who do that. I don't do that. I'm a messy Bessie, honestly. The thing is, being a housewife is also a super thankless job, I'd argue. Because, one, you're just supposed to clean. And by the rules of Moralton, it's just something women are supposed to do because they're women. Whereas men, they're men. And they're 40 figures. And they should be praised as such. Even if, ironically, do they deserve any praise? They're men. Aren't they doing what they're expected to do? Meaning, even if Bloberta might like cooking and cleaning because it gives her a form of control she wouldn't otherwise get, well, nobody's going to truly appreciate it or tell her thank you beyond possibly her son. And hey, Orel is just a symptom of her misery. I don't know, but let's circle back to Bloberta wanting emotional connection or to feel something, even if it's joy or pain. Even if Bloberta might not feel joy from Clay or from the townsfolk townsfolk, well, she possibly could feel it from her children, from the joy of being a mother. But this is also confusing. Yes, Orel loves and cherishes his parents, but I hate to say it, he annoys the both of them, since he actually internalized any of the lessons he gave them, like how animals have no souls. In fact, a lot of religions actually do believe this. Plus, he's still a naive child, so he hasn't been broken yet the same way they have. And honestly, he admires Clay a lot more than Bloberta, since Clay is a man and Orel's a boy, and Clay's his hero and as head of the household, his provider. In season 1, he's the main dude who gives him advice, no matter how bad or insane. Plus, this is just a me thing, but I feel like she's so disconnected from Orel because he's the only child she truly conceived with Clay. She's Clay's son, not hers. The only one who actually looks like him, who reminds her of him. Just saying, besides Stephen, Chris, and Linda, Bloberta and Clay remind me of Bojack's parents, Butterscotch and Beatrice. In Bojack, he and his father share the same voice, which makes sense as Bojack is meant to deconstruct sitcoms and adult cartoons, and sometimes in sitcoms and adult cartoons, the dad and the grandpa share the same voice, usually to be cheap, but sometimes for comedy and whatnot. But Butterscotch and Beatrice hate each other probably more than Clay and Bloberta, and the only man Beatrice truly loved was her brother, Crackerjack, who looks just like her son, who was probably named after him. Unfortunately, from Beatrice's perspective, this is likely another reason she can't love Bojack. Whenever she sees her son, not only does she see her own mistakes she refuses to admit to, but she sees her brother with the voice of the man she hates more than anything protruding from his tiny little mouth, which might be partially true of Bloberta considering how her brother, Lunchbox, looks like a ginger version of Orel, but I digress. Beyond Orel, Bloberta has another son named Shapey. However, there are a few things you need to know about Shapey because he's honestly more tragic than Orel. First up, Shapey, despite his behavior, is actually 7 years old, as in he probably should be in the 2nd or 3rd grade, but he's so coddled yet neglected by Bloberta that he acts more like a toddler at best. For example, in Clay's video, I brought up how Bloberta still breastfed Shapey, despite the fact he's at an age where he probably should be weaned or at least able to feed himself, but I think I know a few reasons. In Clay's video, I also compared Shapey to Robert Arryn from Game of Thrones, who is still fed by his mother despite being roughly the same age if not a bit older. But the reason Liza does it is because she loves her son too much and she's too overprotective. Kind of like Clay's mom, she had a bunch of babies die before their time. But Bloberta, she just wants it to feel some connection, some emotional connection. And what better way than the only physical connection a mother can provide and a father can't. Plus, because the townsfolk are so neglectful, they'll probably be like, oh, what a great mother. Even if, ironically, she neglects both of her sons outside of that. It's the point where in Sacrifice, when Shapey is finally able to put into words why he does what he does, well, she's positively perplexed.
Mommy, not now, Shapey. No milk.
when I'm thirsty, it feels how I feel when I'm alone.
What?
Fun fact, Shapey is voiced by the show creator's daughter, which is actually kind of cute. Since when Moral Orel was airing, she was still a kid, so it was a Boo for Monsters Inc. situation. And that was a line she actually said in real life that made it into the episode. But besides that one sentence, which we'll likely get to its in-universe origin later, well, Shapey never really says full-on sentences. It's a Max and Ruby situation. Like, he's that neglected that instead of saying, like, Mommy, I want another drink, he just screams like, ah.
And now it's affecting our precious society.
Drink!
A 30%.
Or instead of like, Mommy, I want a piece of cake, he's just like, cake.
Cake!
Which I guess you could argue could be for some outside reason, like maybe Shapey has a disability they just refuse to acknowledge, but that's not how it's portrayed, so I'm confident saying he's just super neglected. Now, I want you to pay attention to something. Shapey might have Mickey Mouse ears like Orel, but does he actually look like Orel outside of that? Or even Clay? No! Which leads into the conflict of the Christmas special, or at least the first one. The family goes to Christmas services where Reverend Putty gives a sermon on the story of Jesus' birth. Since technically speaking, Jesus wasn't Joseph's son, he was a virgin birth, since he was the son of God. Mary was just like a chosen vessel, I hate to say. But Mary's betrothed, Joseph, was told by the angels to take care of him, and so he did. Even if technically speaking, Jesus wasn't Joseph's son, but he was still raised like he was.
Jesus was an unplanned birth. Why, if Joseph refused to let the baby grow, who knows what this building would be right now.
And this leads to two things. One, it leads to a subplot of Orel thinking that Shapey is Jesus' second coming due to his post-church talk with Reverend Putty.
But this time, he won't be as nice.
Orel, move!
Sorry, Shape.
You laugh, but there was a special that aired in 2012 when Orel tried to see if God was real by reenacting the binding of Isaac, and when his grandpa stopped him from killing his brother, he still saw it as proof of God's existence because grandpa was an instrument of God, technically speaking. Will Clay and Bloberta start to get a bit guilty since they think the sermon was directed at them, even though it probably wasn't. I don't think it was.
Well, that was a mortifying sermon today. You know the Reverend was referring to you not wanting Shapey.
That's ridiculous. How would he even know?
Like, nobody throughout the show really stops to think besides them, like, hey, is Shapey really their son? So, yeah, like, I just noticed this. Like, really nobody, like, says anything. Outside of Danielle, but still.
But because Joseph had the moral goodness to raise the surprise, we are safe and warm here in a Protestant church.
And even then, the point of the sermon was made that even if Jesus wasn't Joseph's true father, as in he came from Joseph's seed, Joseph still raised him and cared for him like he was. So I think Clay is taking the wrong lesson from this. Even if Shapey isn't his, quote, real son the same way Orel is, and he has a right to get angry at Bloberta for lying to him, well, he still raised Shapey for 7 years. So he's Shapey's father more than the random man she screwed who totally wasn't Coach Topframe. Plus, I even said it in my Clay video, but Clay has been cheating on Bloberta probably as long as Bloberta has cheated on him, if not a bit longer. So if anything, he doesn't have a right to get angry. The only difference is Bloberta had proof of the affair because, unfortunately, she could make babies and he can't. Orel and Shapey go to bed while Clay confronts Bloberta with the truth. He's finally put 2 and 2 together and realized Shapey's not his biological son, and he's angry.
Please, when do you ever remember?
All I do is try to forget. At least you know he's yours.
But strangely, he doesn't realize that Shapey is Danielle's son, so he just missed the mark, which makes me wonder how he would react if he actually found out the truth. Would he be happy because they'd finally have a son together? Would he be betrayed by 2 people he loved? Still, Bloberta demands a divorce, and Clay leaves in the middle of the night to presumably go get cigarettes and some milk to wash those cigarettes down, while Bloberta spends the whole night crying. Whoa. Yeah, I have no other words for this besides whoa. Hold on to that. Orel has his little escapade with Shapey and ends up still thinking he's the second coming, because honestly nobody really corrects him, so for all we know Orel still thinks this to this day. While Bloberta comes by to say that their parents are getting divorced, and rather than comforting Orel when he expresses sadness his father won't be there for Christmas, she just takes Shapey home and tells Orel,
"But it's Christmas. We can't spend it without him."
Then I suggest you go find your precious father and the 2 of you spend Christmas together.
Ew, you're not even gonna be gentle about it? Like, dude, this kid's entire home life is going to be ripped asunder and you just claw his eyes out? Especially with the implication his dad won't be around anymore, or at least not as much? What the hey? Orel does track down Clay to the bar and spots him with Coach Stopframe, but he doesn't put 2 and 2 together and realize the pair are together, and with 2 minutes to midnight, he prays to God to fix his parents' marriage.
Didn't turn out to be the best Christmas ever. But you still have 2 minutes left, and I have faith in you.
Whoa. Okay, yeah, I told you guys to remember that whoa. But okay, why does it hit me? See, this is the season finale of season 1 of Moral Orel, and up until this point, the show was a pretty typical adult sitcom. What set them apart from the competition was they were stop motion, which even today is still pretty rare for cartoons, and they just happened to make fun of Christianity, which I guess isn't as rare, but an entire show focused on that is pretty rare. I think the quote-unquote worst episode they did was God Chef, where Orel thinks that babies come from an angel known as God Chef, who visits women when they're asleep and fills them with special frosting from the Lord's pastry bag. Without giving too much away, since this episode has divided the fan base down the middle, well, I don't think it's anything you wouldn't find on any other show at the time. Or even today, I hate to say. I mean, this was Adult Swim back when it was something you just didn't watch. I mean, remember Waldorf's Babies from Drawn Together? The Christmas special was when the show finally told us, yep, this isn't like anything else on a network involving talking food or talking squids or sea labs or space ghosts. I mean, sure, the Boondocks started airing the same year, and they were a bit more serious, but that wasn't meant to be a story-driven show. It had storylines, but it wasn't serialized, and it was still a comedy at its heart. Moral Orel was meant to be more of a straightforward comedy drama, or a drama that happened to have some comedy. Back when animation wasn't a medium, it was either for kids, or it was meant to be like Family Guy or some flavor of the like. And it's awesome when this happens, when you get to this aha moment, when they finally pull the rug from underneath. The fact that Clay and Bloberta hate each other was a joke up until then? Well, Are you laughing now? Can you really rewatch the first season the same way again? The thing is, Adult Swim, a channel meant to push the envelope, was concerned that this show was pushing the envelope because they weren't pushing it the right way. As a test of if the viewers were going to watch a whole show as dark as this, the network aired the Christmas special as the pilot episode, which the creator did not want, and what the viewers did not want, since they had no clue what was going on or what was so bad about this. Heck, when Moral Orel was back on Hulu, this was listed as the first episode, and because I had no frame of reference for the show, well, I found it incredibly hard to get into. Like, I didn't finish the show literally until a few weeks ago. I knew what it was about, I just didn't get around to finishing it. I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, so maybe that was a factor, since as an adult, these shows hit you a lot harder because you could actually get all the themes, but yeah, it was still really hard to pay attention or be like, what's the big whoop? Like, let me put it like this. For BoJack, I think a reason their best episodes like Free Churro or Time Zero or That's Too Much Man are so good is because of the lead up. Since then, all those little hints throughout the show hit you harder. Heck, when I first started watching BoJack, I didn't really like the first season. Honestly, this is a common sentiment. So I would start watching the episodes they said were the best to see if it was actually worth watching. And one of those episodes was Free Churro. And I'll level with you because I only really watched the first 3 episodes. Free Churro just felt like a lecture to me, since I didn't understand the ramifications or what he was even talking about. When I finally watched the show proper, while Free Churro still isn't my favorite episode, I now have a better frame of reference for why it's so beloved. Like, imagine if Netflix made Free Churro the pilot of BoJack over the actual pilot. That's why it's so bad Adult Swim did what they did, even beyond not listening to the creator, who should know his work a bit more than them. But okay, the thing is, one reason I didn't want to make a Bloberta video after a Clay video was, well, I didn't know what to talk about. I figured I'd be just repeating everything. When I first made my Clay video, I made it under the assumption no one would watch it, but I'm glad you guys did. So I wrote the script trying to stuff as much as I could into that review, hence it being super long. I figured it would be a bit redundant to make a video on Bloberta immediately after, especially since at the time I didn't really have an opinion on Bloberta. But now that I have analyzed the show a bit more and heard from you guys, I think I have more to talk about, since I think Clay and Bloberta really have a horrible marriage for reasons beyond religion playing a factor in them getting together. It certainly did, but yeah, religion is not the problem, it's just a crutch for them. And as many of you have told me, Bloberta 100% trapped Clay into their toxic, loveless marriage, which I think is a cool detail that she's the one who demands a divorce, not Clay. Like, she was the one who wanted this marriage, so she has the power to end it.
You are disgusting. I want a divorce.
Fine. I'm gone.
Or at least she did once upon a time. In God's image, as we know by now, Clay and her decided to stay together for the sake of appearances, since divorce is a grave sin, but is that really why? Like, think about it, how ironic it is. They stayed together and continued to be toxic because they were afraid of what people would say, but in season 3, Florence Papermouth divorces her husband and actually moves in with Dottie, and she's still miserable and nobody cares. We don't know who decided what or how they came to that conclusion, since it all happened off screen, but what if it was Bloberta who was the deciding factor, and Clay just made it out like he was the one who did it because he's a man?
I prayed that you'd get back together.
Well, I think you can give me credit for this one.
See, in nature, when Clay is having his little alcoholic crash out, he compares alcohol to a woman. Since like women, alcohol promises an escape from your problems. They say they can help you and make everything right, but if only temporarily. But in truth, it's really all a lie. You're gonna wake up with a hangover, feeling worse than you are. And in Clay's case, if you don't know your limits, well, you can become a bad person when you drink, or when you drink too much.
Why do you quit working on me?
She always fools me, Orel.
I'll make things better, dear. Drink me. Put me inside you. I'm great.
That's likely how it was with Clay and Bloberta. Clay might have agreed to a divorce, especially since it's implied the first place he went to was Danielle's in order to talk, but Bloberta might have felt or said, oh, I can't live with him, and I can't live without him. So she convinced him, if we get back together, I can make everything better. I can help you. And that's what happened. Plus, even if Clay tried to find love elsewhere, especially with Coach Stopframe, well, both are authority figures and Moralton is homophobic. They couldn't publicly show their love. Just saying, the episode Numb provides a good argument in my defense. Numb takes place during nature, aka the weekend when Clay and Orel went on that hunting trip, and we see just how truly lonely Bloberta is. She really has no friends, as she doesn't connect with the other housewives in the town, and she doesn't subscribe to religion the same way Clay does, outside of using it to justify her own prejudices. Like, oh, it's bad to kick puppies or kill them? Oh, who cares? I mean, puppies don't have souls. So she spends the whole weekend trying to feel something. First, she tries to use her, oh my god, I'm on YouTube, adult recreational devices, and nothing. Despite adult recreational devices supposedly being a sin, even if they have massive health benefits, including helping with sleep, but I wouldn't know that, would I? Actually, just to analyze that real quick, the first adult recreational device she uses is called Mr. Wonderful. Obviously, it's named that because it makes women happy, so to speak, but it's also called Mr. Nice detail. Like whatever love Bloberta can't get from her living, breathing husband, she'll get from an artificial one who can't talk back to her. And she still can't feel anything, likely because of her own pent-up issues. And therapy? Who's going to that? So she tries to use her hidden affair scrapbook to give herself some sense of nostalgia. And still, she can't get that because it just reminds her of what once was, how she used to be happy, and now she's all alone, taking care of kids.
No! Cake! Yummy!
Okay, I should explain. If you don't remember, in the Lord's Prayer, a new family moved in who were basically the Puppingtons, but with a few letters changed. Because the new family said their prayers slightly differently, gasp, they couldn't get along with the Puppingtons, and they ended up moving away. But in the process, they left behind Block and took Shapey, kind of like Shapey's counterpart. And only now Bloberta has noticed and decides to switch babies. Not because she dearly misses her son and feels she committed some kind of grave mistake, mind you, especially as a mother, but because he's the closest living reminder to her affair with Danielle. The only time she ever felt happy. When she goes to get Shapey back, well, Block's mother doesn't want Block, so Bloberta keeps him, which admittedly is kind of nice of her. And rather than be happy she now has two kids who love her, like she could get that emotional connection she so craves that way, she just goes right back to neglecting him ×2.
Cake. Yummy? Yummy. Mine? Mine.
Okay, I should bring up that if the show finished its course, they were going to give Shapey his own arc, where they were going to explain Shapey now speaking in coherent sentences was Block and Shapey, well, whatever connection they didn't get from their parents or even their brother, they'd get from each other, which I find really sweet. Orel was able to partially find goodness in his life by continuing to talk to Christina, even if their parents forbade it, like brother, and this is probably the only time people are paying attention to Shapey. But I partially get why Bloberta neglected the two of them. Well, she wants to feel needed, but both are so neglected they aren't a good conduit for the emotional connection she craves. Plus, they're still children, and on some level, maybe she isn't willing to parentify a child the same way Clay is. So she goes to Coach Stopframe, who sadly informs her that whatever emotional connection she wants from him, yeah, she's not getting it. He wanted her, not for her, but simply to get closer to her husband, and well...
I'm sorry. Oh, wait. No, I'm not. I don't care. Wow, what a freeing thought.
Yeah, what a jerk. Like, I thought Principal Fakey was a jerk. This dude ruined a marriage and he doesn't care. He had an illegitimate child he knows is his, and he's perfectly fine just pretending he isn't. At least he made it up to Orel, at least, but still, this dude sucks. Oh, and also he threw a Molotov cocktail at the Figurellis. Like, this dude sucks. Like, he had the gall to criticize Clay's skills as a father. For what little praise you could give Clay, at least Orel knows that's his father. But I also have tried to rationalize this a bit. Maybe this was Coach Stopframe realizing, wait, hold off. This dude deserves his own video. We're discussing Bloberta right now. Bloberta tries searching for companionship elsewhere, but all of the men she chooses, well, they want nothing to do with her, or she oversells the deal. First off, she tries Reverend Putty, which I think she did because he's just an easy attempt, or so it seems from the offset. Reverend Putty is known for the fact that he desperately wants a woman to sleep with him, but the women of the town just view him as the town priest and nothing more. Even if, unlike Catholics, he's a Protestant, so he can indeed date. Maybe not sleep around with women, but hey.
Brings you...
Reverend, I want you.
I'm sorry?
I need you. I have this feeling.
Oh, well, meet me at the church repressional.
No, I want to be with you.
And I do appreciate how she just came out and said, Reverend Putty, I want to do you. Likely because she knows he's just as desperate as her. But she oversells the deal, and out of embarrassment, he sends her off.
I'm done.
What?
I'm done. Go away. Go a million miles away.
And something I've realized, she tried men who were either authority figures, like either to prove to herself or to Clay she was desirable to somebody of importance, or they seemed manly, so to speak, since Bloberta likely doesn't view Clay in that light, especially considering him and Danielle. Or they seem desperate like her, so they'd be easier targets. I know you're probably like, well, why doesn't she just go to Principal Fakey? He enjoys cheating on his wife. Yeah, with Nurse Bendy. Plus, unlike Reverend Putty, I really don't think he'd be able to keep it a secret. He'd probably just blab to the whole town and tell everybody that Bloberta led him on. And unlike Nurse Bendy, this would be the one time he's actually right and people would actually listen. So instead, she changes course. She goes to the No Hammer hardware store. Oh, it sucks they don't sell hammers.
Yes, we have hammers. No, it's just my name!
Oh, my mistake. Ironically, the shopkeeper seems to be nice to her, and I feel like if she asked him, he'd probably, do it or service her. The irony. Instead, she buys another device that seems like an adult recreational device, but really isn't. And all it does is cause her an immense amount of pain and blood.
That's some injury, Mrs. Puppington.
It's bad.
Bad? Oh, no, not bad at all.
Ugh, sorry, that's one of my triggers. It's a sensitive spot for me because, this is not me joking, it's like the most sensitive spot on your body if you're an AFAB. I know guys do it, but oh my god. And it sends her to Dr. Potterswheel, a doctor who, let's just say, has a certain affinity for what he sees in his line of work.
I became a doctor because blood and injuries don't affect me the way they do most normal people. The good Lord gave me the gift of not being disgusted by horrible lacerations.
Okay, I have thoughts about this. First off, Dr. Potterswheel is a disgusting human being. Now, I have no problem if you have certain fascinations. We're all human. To me, so long as it doesn't involve children or animals or other such things that can't give consent, I don't mind. However, he kind of reminds me of the doctor from the movie Teeth, where, okay, you have these fascinations, but you're letting it impede your work or exploiting it with innocent people. Yeah, that's when I have problems with you, because you're not trying to help anybody but yourself at that point. You're just taking advantage of them. For instance, instead of prescribing Bloberta actual medication to treat what happens, since something like that could likely get infected, or maybe give her an ice pack or even say, look, stop doing that, he just gives her painkillers, aka a band-aid solution. And he tells her that if she comes back, he'll just up the dosage each time she does. Since whenever Bloberta comes back, she's gonna be 10 times worse, and it's gonna be 10 times better for him.
Take 2 pills every 6 hours or whatever. They're just a high-level painkiller that'll simply repress those nagging warning signs you get when your body desperately vies for your attention.
And what's worse is, it's basically an open secret that he does this, since he did it to his wife until she overdosed and died.
Ooh, the long arm of the law.
No, Roger.
Yeah, Roger, listen to the wife murderer.
What's ironic is that, yeah, Clay is right that he has no right judging him, but at the same time, he's only saying this for attention. And Clay didn't mind it when he needed to hide the truth of Orel's leg, which makes me wonder if Bloberta bought that adult recreational device in order to feel something and going to Dr. Potterswheel was a happy consequence, or if she purposefully did that to herself in order to get his attention elsewhere. Either option is horrible, because now Bloberta sees this as the best of both worlds. She can keep self-harming because it's the only time she actually feels something. Oh my god, that's horrible. Sweetie, you shouldn't do that. Good or bad doesn't matter, and she can finally entice Dr. Potterswheel. And hey, because she has painkillers, she doesn't feel a thing pain-wise. But the thing is, well, she ends up falling head over heels for Dr. Potterswheel, aka a doctor, and doesn't realize he only likes her for her wounds and how much worse they're getting. So when she finally comes out and says that she wants to be with him now that she's fully healed, well, he doesn't know how to take it and simply ends things.
You don't even care about me.
Well, I care for you. I'm a doctor.
But I thought that you really...
Her whole weekend a waste, Bloberta goes back home and gets rid of the adult recreational device, still feeling numb because she could have had something even if it was fleeting. Also, yeah, you know what happened on the whole hunting trip. Clay shot Orel after he got drunk and took him to Dr. Potterswheel to heal him up, since Dr. Potterswheel won't talk. Orel is taken home, made to eat tons of fatty foods to make his leg clot and heal faster. Lucky. But before Bloberta leaves, Orel asks her why did she marry Clay, as in what desirable trait got him to seem more appealing to her despite his drinking.
Oh, well. Why not? He doesn't change, Orel.
That's just his true nature coming out.
Oh boy, don't worry, there's more. After Bloberta leaves and shuts the door behind her, well, she starts sobbing, just as she did during the Christmas special, where the only time she's willing to be vulnerable and actually open up is when she thinks she's alone. Is it because maybe she knows she's partially to blame for this? Is it because she hates her life? What is it? But as soon as she notices Clay watching her, she just stops and acts indifferent like usual, like she won't give him the satisfaction of letting him see her all that vulnerable. So they both go into their room and into their respective beds, and rather than talk or whatever, well, they just lie down and stare at the ceiling, equally numb and equally depressed at what they did. But while Clay has his alcohol to help numb him, Bloberta has nothing anymore, not even her painkillers. And because her adult recreational devices no longer work, she doesn't even have those. Wow, that's a dark ending. And honestly, it kind of reminds me of that one BoJack quote, all three of us were drowning, and we didn't know how to save each other, but there was an understanding that we were all drowning together. And considering how Orel lost whatever innocence was left on that hunting trip, that really does mean all three of them are drowning. It's not just two people now. But Clay and Bloberta are too wrapped up in their own selfish delusions to actually comfort their children or each other. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if that's one reason they stay together. This whole video, I do say it's because divorce is a sin, but clearly going back to the paper's mouths, it's not as big a deal as they think. Like, they're so conflicted with what people think of them that they think they'll, like, be pariahs, and yet they'll probably just be like, sorry dude. Maybe to borrow another BoJack quote, I can't be with people, and I can't be alone. As much as they can't stand each other, there is the understanding that they know how the other works. They're used to the toxicity that it just seems unthinkable to end it. And hey, maybe they hate themselves and each other that they think that they're that unlovable. Like, maybe they deserve this. Like, they deserve a prison of their own making. I don't know. I know people who have wallowed or continue to wallow in such relationships, and this is always my response for why they continue to do so. Misery loves company, and sunk cost fallacy goes a long way. However, now that we're almost to the episode help, I should give any possible flaws I have with Bloberta. Since one of my rules is, when I write scripts, I have to name at least one problem I have. And my main problem, Orel doesn't have this huge revelation about his mother. I guess you can argue it's because the show got cut short, but Orel loses his innocence about his father being this upstanding guy, and yet he never does the same for his mother. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the series, considering his whole questions about why she's still married to him, he thinks of her as a victim as much as him, even if the truth is a lot more complicated. I guess you can argue that Bloberta isn't as big as an abuser as Clay, but she's still a neglectful enabler, and you know my views on Alador Blight. That's still abuse in some regard. Heck, she's still toxic. I mean, remember the Christmas episode? Again, maybe she's not as bad as Clay, I'd argue, but she's a different flavor. What, I like to be fair. But okay, we've gotten to the episode Help. I'm sure along with Orel, you're asking, well, why did she marry Clay?
Why? Well, men have to marry women.
Not for that reason, but why did she marry this man in specific?
Oh, well... Why not?
Bloberta, we are getting to that, oh my god. Nobody in these episodes ever wants me to review them. I mean, I get it, I hate getting criticized too, and I'm a critic, so how ironic, but let me do my job, please. As a young adult, Bloberta hung around the younger ladies of the town, which I just want to bring up since we see in present day that she has no friends. Like, Clay is more popular in the community than her. We only really see her interact with people at like town meetings or church. It makes you wonder if in trying to get what they had, Bloberta ended up miserable and pushed everyone away. Or, much like Clay in Sacrifice, they recognized what she was going through and pushed her away to protect themselves. Originally, she was part of a circle of young women who protested everything, which included Mrs. Principal Fakey and Miss Censordoll. Since remember, Fran is really 40, she just looks older because she was mutilated as an infant and she dresses more conservatively. And while her friends had boyfriends or fiancés, well, Bloberta had nobody.
Oh, it's so nice to feel wanted. I hope you'll all be at my engagement party tonight.
Now, is the borderline arrow in the room? I need to give my thoughts on this because clearly mine are the most correct, Avi. Yeah, it does suck or feel like that to be left out, but at the same time, even if it sucks you aren't going at the same speed, well, there's some value in that. There's joy in waiting. You get the most bang for your buck since you get the most experience, and you and this person will likely mature or be better off for it. Marriage is a big decision, probably the biggest decision you can ever make next to having children after after all, and I'm sure neither of you want to have your heart broken or problems. Plus, it's perfectly fine to not get married super young, I hate to say. Mistakes happen, you grow into different people as you mature, and hey, do you really know each other at that point? Do you really know what you want? People change. Don't just get married because you feel like you have to. Get married because you love this person and you want to spend the rest of your life with them, for however long that'll be. I mean, Roger Bumpus, the voice of Squidward and Professor Membrane, he got married in 2019 at the age of 67, and he looks happy. However, Bloberta lives in Morrilton, where if you're a woman, well, you have to get married whether you like it or not. What else will you even do, unless you're Stephanie? Heck, in religious terms, since a woman is to make babies for her husband, she's supposed to get married young so she can make a ton of them. Even if I have to say it, you could still have kids after you turn 30. A lot of people do that, men and women, and anybody else for that matter. I mean, come on, Meghan Markle had kids when she was like 35. Ironic considering how Principal Fakey promised to give his wife a baby and then threw her out rather than admit he was cheating on her. And while her friends unintentionally made her feel excluded, like they probably meant well, Miss Censordoll went the full extra mile and said like, because you ain't married, you're not one of us.
I didn't get a sign, Fran.
Last one to spurn, first one to burn. It appears we don't need you today, Bloberta.
But I want to spurn.
Hypocritical, but Fran is one of those, it's okay for me because I'm free from sin. Like, it's fine when I do it because I'm a good person, so I can pass judgment on you kind of hypocrite. I hate those hypocrites. Plus, she's the one leading the protests, so best not to get on her bad side, I'd argue. Much like Clay, the only thing she had in common was her abusive home life. However, whereas Clay's problem was his one parent was too involved, and then when she died, the other parent just did not care, Bloberta's parents excluded her, period, due to her supposedly awful singing.
That was me, singing. Along with the family.
Really, Bloberta? You know we don't need two sopranos, and your older sister has perfect pitch.
See, her family ran a choir, and with a choir, there needs to be a bit of conformity, or everybody has a predetermined role, I hate to say. And she just didn't fit in. Oh, that sucks. Think, you don't fit in at home, and you don't fit in with society. Like, that's a really sad feeling. Plus, I hate to say it, I really like Bloberta singing, and I'm not just trying to be polite. I don't know, I think that mainstream-wise, yeah, it's not the best, like she's not gonna win any awards, but her opera singing takes a certain amount of talent that most people just can't muster. The only one I think of is Sarah Brightman, so I am very impressed. Even if she doesn't have perfect pitch, that's still impressive. And ironically, a lot of singers started off singing in church choirs, like Katy Perry. Wait, am I allowed to mention her? But hey, a certain theme with her backstory is conformity is cool, even if it really isn't. Her only escape was ironically what would be Clay's escape in the present day: alcohol. Also, notice something. When we see her room, it's all messy, like she just can't bear to clean it, even if we know her current obsessive coping mechanism is cleaning. The reasoning for it I explained in the intro, since it gives her a sense of control. I think this encapsulates that she felt she had no control over her life as a teenager, but I'm probably just stating the obvious. Maybe another reason is out of spite, since her mother specifically told her to go clean it, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was, like, not the first time she said that. And who really listens to their parent?
Why don't you help me out and do something useful, dear? Like, clean your room.
Her only sense of companionship was her father, who was a nice shoulder to cry on. But despite her pleas, unfortunately, he was too timid to stop her mother or stand up for her, even if, in his defense, he did try.
I tried talking to your mother, but she wouldn't even let me have the courage to bring it up, let alone say things.
That's okay, Daddy.
Speaking of, I want to overanalyze the lyrics. See, when Bloberta goes to the fakey wedding, not with her family mind you, but by herself, we hear them singing their own version of Here Comes the Bride, which is usually the song that gets sung when the bride walks down the aisle, which isn't subtle about how the only reason they're so insistent about these girls marrying is so they can effectively give up their own autonomy as people in order to be submissive and please men, like straight to her master to serve and provide, which unfortunately describes the fate of Mrs. Principal Fakey. And this is her wedding. No matter how hard she tries, she just can't keep her husband happy since he's too selfish to notice. But society will say it's her fault when honestly it's his. Or what about all that a man needs to command a family whose roles he will ultimately plan? Ironically, the whole point of marriage, despite what they're saying, is that it's an equal partnership, or it's at least meant to be. It's two people united in working together for the benefit of the whole. But because for these women, society says it's just what you have to do, they don't do too much to think critically about this, because when you think about it, in Moralton, there is value in not being married. Sure, you might not have a husband, or in some cases you might not have kids, but you're still your own individual and you can make your own decisions. Like Stephanie, she's a quote weirdo, but ultimately it's still her life and she's choosing to live it however she wants, and nobody can tell her otherwise. Even Fran, she's the one who enforces and upholds such values, and yet nobody ridicules her. At the church, she finally met Clay, who tried to pull the Protestant version of Simon Hastings and not get married or have kids because reasons, which they never get into besides like he just wants to live a good Christian life. But hey, sometimes you don't need like these big reasons. It doesn't need any further elaboration. Some people just might not want to get married or not want to have kids just because. Plus, I hate to say it, for some people, maybe they think the only way to break the cycle is to be sure it can't continue. I mean, look at John Lennon's sons. But from what it's implied, he was the only unmarried man in Moralton, and so Bloberta felt drawn to him, even if she didn't ultimately know him. And when she got to know him, well, she found they had practically nothing in common besides dysfunctional families, and trauma bonding can only go so far.
All of them?
Well, there were only 2.
I see.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was a bloodbath or anything.
Clay, you lying sack of sack. It was a total bloodbath. Old Gunny was stained with the blood of your mother. And also ketchup. Mostly blood. But even minor things they disagreed on. For example, Bloberta drank like a fish. And also since, hey, it's a wedding. Even if you probably don't drink, you're probably gonna have like a glass if at that, since it's a special occasion. But Clay, he just drank apple juice. What, or rather, who got him to start drinking? Bloberta.
Isn't drinking a sin?
Jesus drank.
Well, true.
A lot.
Well, if Jesus drank...
2 eyeballs!
Haha, using your own religion against you. Also, alcohol contents back then versus now were super different, BTW. So you could drink alcohol recreationally, probably the same way you could with soda, since the concentration was a lot lower, especially since they'd also diluted. Plus, I hate to say it, to some degree, isn't wine just fermented grape juice? So in a way, we're all right. I don't know, I'm stalling and I just did a quick Google search, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but that's just me and my thing. I just feel like when people quote stuff from the Bible, they also forget about the, I guess you could say, standards at the time, or the fact that life was totally different back then. So like when they say like, don't eat pork, it's because back then pork was legitimately unclean, so they couldn't or something, whereas nowadays, you know what I mean. Bloberta got Clay to drink, and the two started partying, since Bloberta helped him, and he had a good time. Ironic, I feel like considering this scene, Bloberta married her father. Like, you know how they say like sometimes you end up marrying your parents? Well, her father was a good man, but ultimately very timid. The difference is that her parents did seem to love each other and be on the same wavelength, whereas Bloberta and Clay were too different to ever be anything major besides possibly friends, and Bloberta's attempts to change him only made it worse. On the dance floor, she tried to get Clay to propose, but he adamantly refused. He had his reasons, and those reasons were valid.
Rachel, what is for you?
Oh, you know, sitting at home, alone, reading the Bible, heaven, you know, things that last.
Angered, she went to the bar, and that's when she started her habit of cleaning as a form of control.
Let me do that. Filth.
But still angry, she knocked out Clay. I don't know whether it was out of anger or frustration or for any future manipulations, but I am massively leaning towards the latter, since it made it seem like she cared about him, and I think part of her did. But part of her also wanted what everybody else had because she was expected to. Even if Clay didn't want to, society told them they needed to be together.
You're quite an asset. Looks like someone is going to make Coach Fakey a very proud husband. And someone isn't!
Bloberta told Clay to propose because even if they married, she'd be able to help him nonstop as a housewife, just like she was doing then. And when Clay protested, well...
It seems all I've been doing since I met you is help and help and help and help and help and help and help you.
Wow. That is a lot of help.
Wow. And yes, she 100% trapped Clay. I just said it weird in my first video because I was mostly focusing on Clay himself. And again, I didn't think I'd get to seriously review Moral Orel, so I tried to get it all out then. But yes, while Bloberta did not hold a pistol to his head, she still manipulated him into giving up his own autonomy. Maybe she thought she'd change him for the better. Which, no, girls, dating a guy because you think you'll change him, that never works. You're just gonna make the both of you miserable. If they wanted to change for you, they would have done done it a long time ago. Or maybe she thought she'd be the one wearing the pants, who knows. Or hey, didn't matter because they'd eventually be married, so she wouldn't be excluded anymore. The thing is, weddings take a while to plan, so by the time she walked down the aisle, well, both of them were already miserable and sick of each other. And they were both neck deep in their coping mechanisms. And heck, we see how joyless it truly was. In Mrs. Principal Fakey's wedding, there was that choir, but at Bloberta's, hey, no choir. I mean, her family was sitting and watching, but you think they would come out and sing for her. And even by the end of the show, she still gets no resolution. Apparently, if the series did continue, she would have had an affair with Officer Papermouth and married him, and they would have met over Sonny, you know, Nurse Bendy's like teddy bear son. But as things stand, Bloberta is eternally alone, running away in a loveless marriage of her own machination with Clay, since she couldn't give him up the one time she got that chance. But wow, these two are like a major case study, one I very much enjoyed dissecting, showing it's not so black and white. Just saying, any other sitcom, they would have been happy together from the start, until responsibilities hit them, and then they become loveless. Or they had a shotgun wedding because of Orel, and then they became loveless. But no, it was always loveless. That's too much, man. So I guess anyhow, bye.